خدا نے مجھ کو دیا ماں تیری دعاؤں سے،
ماں تیری دعاؤں سے
ملا ہے جو بھی ملا ماں تیری دعاؤں سے،
ماں تیری دعاؤں سے، ماں تیری دعاؤں سے
جہاں جہاں بھی گیا دل بچھانے لگے، جہاں جہاں بھی گیا دل بچھانے لگے، یہ ہے تیرا میرا ماں تیری دعاؤں سے،
تیری دعاؤں سے، ماں تیری دعاؤں سے، ماں تیری دعاؤں سے، ماں کی دعا جنت کی ہوا، ماں کی دعا جنت کی ہوا، ماں کی دعا جنت کی ہوا، ماں کی دعا جنت کی ہوا،
یہ کامیابیاں شہرت قدم قدم پہ ملی، یہ کامیابیاں شہرت قدم قدم پہ ملی، نصیب ایسا ملا ماں تیری دعاؤں سے،
تیری دعاؤں سے، ماں تیری دعاؤں سے، ماں تیری دعاؤں سے
طواف میں نے کیا تھی صحیح بربادی، طواف میں نے کیا تھی صحیح بربادی، جو میں نے میرا کیا ماں تیری دعاؤں سے،
تیری دعاؤں سے، ماں تیری دعاؤں سے، ماں تیری دعاؤں سے
مجھے گرانے پہ حاسد تلے ہوئے تھے مگر، مجھے گرانے پہ حاسد تلے ہوئے تھے مگر، میں دشمنوں سے بچا ماں تیری دعاؤں سے،
تیری دعاؤں سے، ماں تیری دعاؤں سے، ماں تیری دعاؤں سے
قسم ہے اس میں اجاگر کا کچھ جمال नहीं कसम है इसे में उजागे का कुछ जमाल नहीं उरूज से को मिला माँ तेरी दुआ से
तेरी दुआओं से माँ तेरी दुआओं से तेरी दुआओं से माँ की दुआ जन्नत की हवा माँ की दुआ जन्नत की हवा की दुआ जन्नत की हवा की दुआ जन्नत की हवा
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another edition of News in Focus live on Radio Ansaar International, broadcasting on the frequency Durban 90.4 FM, Peter Marsburg 105.6 FM, and audio streaming on www.alansar.org.za. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaba bikum. My name is Yunus Sacoor, and I will be in your company for the next 2 hours, 8 to 10 p.m. I will be interviewing many guests shortly. Today, the date is the 18th of June 2025, equivalent to the 22nd of Zilhajj 1446 AH. So we passed the first 10 days of Zilhajj, where a lot of pilgrims have returned from Saudi. We noticed many of them were quite emotional on their return, and families met them reunited. But some have not returned. We know a couple of individuals have passed away in Makkah. They're very fortunate, buried in Makkah al-Mukarramah and Madinatul Munawwara. But alhamdulillah, this blessed month is still with us, and we should make the best of it in the last 8 days that are left. On tonight's show, we're going to talk briefly about the debt relief write-off of a Tekweri municipality, and we have Councillor ERNEST who will be joining us to chat about that issue. Then we're going to talk about wasteful expenditure incurred at the municipalities, and recently there's been some legal costs that were incurred at Tekweri, wherein there's been a lot of concern, and politicians are saying that officials that were responsible should be held accountable. And there's many other issues relating to irregular expenditure, and taxpayer funds are being squandered, and such and such. And we'll have Ernest giving us a report on that issue. But very important subject for this evening is the analysis of the Iran-Israel conflict that started last week on the 14th of June. We're going to do a quick analysis of that, exactly why it happened and which direction it's going, and the casualties, losses, etc. We're going to do an update on the protest march regarding Palestine and Gaza that took place in the weekend, and they were halted by Egypt. Being a Muslim country, it's amazing that they could, halt a march that's taking place towards the Rafah border to ensure that aid reaches those that are in need. And we'll do an analysis of Israel's interception of the Freedom Flotilla in the international waters, which took place last week as well. Now, on Sunday, there was a show on Al-Ansar presented by SUMAYA Khan that covered lots of these issues, and many listeners may not have had an opportunity to listen to the analysis that was given. So in the studio with me, I have live the chairperson of United for Palestine. She is the chairperson of the Women's League of United for Palestine. She's an education activist, a unionist, an educator, but she's wearing various caps this evening, but she's also a political activist. So I'd like to welcome the presenter of School Matters, Sister Sumaya Khan. Sumaya, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus live on Radio Al-Ansar International.
Wa alaikum salam, Brother Yunus. It's a pleasure. A bit strange being on the other end, but glad to be a guest on a political show. I think last time we merged was during the elections.
Yes, it's a pleasure having you here, and with the vast knowledge you have of what's happening in Palestine and being involved in regular marches, etc. A lot of our public, may not have had an opportunity to listen to your morning show. And there's a lot of listeners this evening, both in Durban and Pietermaritzburg, and indeed internationally. And you'll give us insight into all these issues. Later on in the program, we're going to have IMRAN SUBRATHIE. He's a member of Parliament and General Secretary for United for Palestine, Secretary General. So he will join us in the studio to add more. We also will be interviewing Professor HUSSAIN VAWDA. He's a professor at medicine at UKZN, and he's a retired individual, and he's got quite a good insight into what's happening in Palestine and indeed in Gaza. He'll give us, his viewpoint on the matter. And after the 9 o'clock news, we'll interview our economist, asset manager HASSAN MOLTALA, and Maulana Abdul Khalik. He's the president of United Ulama Council and part of MJC. And he was one of the many individuals that left South Africa to join the international march in Egypt, going to the Rafah border. And again, they were stopped. So Sumaya will chat briefly about those issues. But before we have a chat with our guests this evening, I'd like to play another nasheed that's popularly requested by many of our listeners, and catch a listen to the nasheed. And inshallah, after the nasheed, we'll continue with our discussions.
Ya Rasool Allah, Ya Habib Allah, Aka, 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 फिर के गली गली तबाह ठोकर सब की खाए क्यों, दिल को जो अक्ल दे खुदा तेरी गली से जाए क्यों, रुखसत काफिला कशान गश से हमें उठाए क्यों, रुखसत काफिला कशान गश से हमें उठाए क्यों, सोते हैं और के साए में सोते हैं के साए में, कोई हमें जगाए क्यों, फिर के क्यों, दिल को जो अक्ल दे खुदा तेरी गली से जाए क्यों, यादे हुजूर की कसम गफलत ऐश है सितम, यादे हुजूर की कसम गफलत ऐश है सितम, खूब है कैद गम में हम, खूब है कैद गम में हम, कोई हमें छुड़ाए क्यों, गली वो जो न थे तो कुछ न था, वो जो न हो तो कुछ न हो, वो जो न थे तो कुछ न था, वो जो न हो तो कुछ न हो जान है वो जहान की जान है वो जहान की जान है तो जहान गए आका 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 की खाका है क्यों दिल को जो अक्ल दे खुदा तेरी गली से जाए क्यों हाँ जान है इश्क मुस्तफा रोज फजू करे खुदा जान है इश्क मुस्तफा रोज फजू करे खुदा जिसको दर्द का मजा जिसको दर्द का मजा सांसे दवा उठाए क्यों फिर के
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome back to News in Focus live on Radio Ansaar, broadcasting on the frequency Durban 90.4 FM, Peter Masberg 105.6 FM, and streaming on www.alansar.org.za. That's a beautiful nasheed on praises of our Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as requested by a lot of our listeners. Alhamdulillah. We'll start our discussion this evening with Sister Sumaya Khan. Sumaya, currently the topic of Iran-Israel conflict, it's escalated into a full-blown war with both countries exchanging deadly attacks. Now, what I want you to do is, for the benefit of our listeners, just give us a bit of a breakdown on the situation, exactly why it's happened. A lot of people are saying that Israel is sharp moving its focus away from Gaza because of all the protests, etc., and decided to attack Iran. And they thought Iran will take it lying down. And obviously, the reason why Netanyahu, the problem guy, indicated they attacked Iran is because of nuclear weapons. Now, what that's got to do with Israel is another question, whether the USA is behind it, or a lot of our people are saying it's moving the focus away from the problems created Gaza. So perhaps you just want to give us a bit of a breakdown of the situation so our listeners understand the different scenarios that are taking place, because it's becoming progressively worse as we go along, and it's affecting the markets in terms of oil prices, and there's various threats going on.
Well, it's quite a bit to unpack. Iran and Israel, right? Let's see. The Israel and Iran conflict is a multidimensional, struggle. It's involving so many things, military, intelligence, and so many other dynamics. But then when you look at it, it's quite a structured analysis of the conflict, of 2025. Now, we want to know, what are the root causes of these? There are so many. We can say it's also ideological rivalry. Well, as you know, Iran's Islamic Republic does not recognize the legitimacy of Israel, calling it a Zionist regime. So that must be removed. And Israel sees Iran as its most, threat. They are so threatened by it. And the other issue where other journalists and political analysis, they are saying it's dealing, and I think lots of us will agree with this, with nuclear issues. Israel opposes Iran's nuclear ambitions, believing Iran is seeking a nuclear weapon despite Iran's claim of, they have peaceful intent. So a lot of us questions that, because we do know that Iran is known for its when it comes to nuclear weapons and manufacturing, and they're quite sharp with that. And then something else which plays such an important role and points to consider: we look at the regional dominance when you're looking at, they want to take over. Well, if you look at it, both nations seek influence across the Middle East, especially in Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, and, other surrounding areas. Well, the current situation, military and the proxy fronts. Syria, Israel regularly conducts airstrikes on Iranian weapons depots. If you think about it, earlier on today, it's like ongoing. If you're following the news, it's like you can't keep count of it, And so Syria was targeted, to prevent the arms from reaching Hezbollah. Lebanon, Hezbollah, Iran's ally, has amassed an estimated 150,000 plus rockets aimed at Israel, the border. It clashes, the clashes intensify. And at a moment you think Iran was just sleeping and very quiet, and now overnight they are so active. And then you look at Gaza. I mean, we all are aware of what's happening, and are we trying to shift the focus away from that there? Because Iran funds and arms Hamas. Now we go back to Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic, the jihad, contributing to the rocket attacks on Israel. And then if you look at it, it's all the Islamic countries around which are involved, Iraq and Yemen. Iran, backed by militants, soldiers and influential leaders, have also targeted us, when you think about it, and Israel's interest. And now we're going to the recent developments and what has come out about it. Starting from April 2024, Iran launched drones and missiles directly at Israel after an Israeli strike killed an Iranian general in Damascus. Now, one would say, did this start everything, or was everything happening, but it wasn't so big on social media? Because when you think about it, for Palestine, for our brothers and sisters in Gaza to be free, and Palestine, the struggle was continuing over the decades. But only now, after this incident, it's everyone's up in arms, and they're questioning it, they're challenging it, they're blaming each other. But again, the struggle was still continuing, and cyber warfare. If you think about it, increased cyber attacks have hit infrastructure, financial systems, and communication networks in both nations. Generally, when you look at places which are war torn, where there's civil wars, and generally when there's conflict in third world countries, in Arab countries, one would never think of drones and cyber warfare. But this is the current situation. This is reality. And also the assassination of Israel's Mossad, is suspected in the death of Iranian nuclear scientist and IRGC commander. And this was something which created more anger. Well, if you look at the international dynamics, 4 key players, that's the United States. Well, the United States has their fingers in everything, and by everyone. So United States, a strong Israeli ally, we all are aware of this. It provides military aid and intelligence. Well, the United States tries to avoid full-scale war in the region. They say that they tend to work behind the scenes, under the scenes, and they're always looking for alibis. But if you tend to follow what's happening, you can see quite crystal clear that United States is responsible and instigators, masterminds of manipulating what's going on. Russia and China, often back Iran politically and economically, especially after the USA sanctions. Now, one would say politics doesn't play a role in all of this, but it does when you think about it, generally, globally, a lot of activists, individual citizens, the normal man is focusing on humanitarian aid and food, but there's a bigger picture. It's about control, ownership. Arab states. Now, when you look at the Gulf nations, UAE, Saudi, quietly cooperates with Israel against Iran due to share their concerns. Well, normalization efforts, when you think about it, according to others, it widens the Israeli-Arab cooperation axis. But again, it's not really put on social media. And again, when you look at Saudi from the other Arab countries, everyone's a bit hesitant because they're not openly giving their 100% support. And then when you look at Europe presses for, they want to be diplomatic on the nuclear files. They support the two-state solution. But one worries about the Iranian aggression. One says that if Iran loses it, there can be another world war, which might take place. And then the risk, escalation to full-scale war. One would also say there's miscalculation, especially in Lebanon or Syria, could spark a regional war. And again, we go back to nuclear. If Iran goes nuclear, it may trigger an arms race in the Middle East. And this, if you really look at it, the way it's going, it's kind of heading that way. And civilians at risk again, both Israeli and Iranian, so especially in Gaza, have led to large civilians, risking their lives, their homes and everything. Yeah, so that's it. That's about it when you break it down, the analysis.
Just to add to what you're saying, we've got Professor Hussain VAWDA who's joined us. He's on the line, but he will be chatting and giving his input briefly. The international response you mentioned, where the US has expressed support for Israel's right to defend itself. I mean, it's abysmal and it's ridiculous for them to say that Donald Trump has demanded that Iran's unconditional surrender. Now, in which way is Israel defending itself when they attacked Iran? And he's then indicating that the US has also relocated aerial refueling tankers to Europe to position them closer to the Middle East. So whether he's the instigator of this particular war that's turning out to be a big problem, and we know there's a lot of implications. I've got Professor Hussain VAWDA, who's quite a learned individual on this aspect. Professor, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus live on Radio Ansaar International. Professor, can you hear us? I think, Professor, you're on mute. If you can just get yourself out of mute, and then we'll have a chat with you. We'll try to get Professor back on the line. Sumaya, just to basically talk about the global concerns, international leaders are calling for restraint, and we know that's coming from many people, and warning that the region teeters into the brink of a broader war, and that could create serious problems. The UN nuclear watchdog has expressed concerns about the impact of nuclear safety. I think we've got Professor back on the line. Professor Hussain, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus live on Radio Ansaar International. Professor, are you on the line?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Professor. Professor, I'm interviewing currently Sister Sumaya Khan, and we're chatting about the conflict Iran-Israel. And Sumaya has given us a bit of a background onto why this conflict has taken place and what are the implications. Perhaps you want to just give us some input on your side as to how do you see it, whether it's something that Israel has caused and they're trying to indicate to the world that they're defending themselves. Your comments, Professor.
Yes, okay.
Professor, your line is unclear. We'll have to try to contact you on another line. You've given us another line. While we're trying to... Professor, are you there? Okay, so Professor's line is a bit unclear, so we'll get back to him. So may I just coming back to the humanitarian crisis that this has created, the casualties. Israel strikes have killed at least 585 people in Iran. That's a large number, with many more wounded. Hospitals in western Iran have damaged, and patients have been injured, and falling debris and broken glass as well. The Iranian retaliation is quite intense also. Iran responded with a barrage of missiles at Israel, striking the Galilee region and killing 4 civilians. Israel's defense minister declared Tehran is burning as Israel is hit back with further skies. But there's also reports that Tel Aviv is also in a serious mess. Now, we know that the media does create a bit of hype about all these issues, and we're not sure, who to believe. But I've listened to a clip by the leader of Israel, and he's indicated that now that Israel has instigated this war against Iran, it is the nature of the Iranians that they will respond and respond decisively and ensure that justice prevails, because what the Israelis are doing worldwide with the help of US is unacceptable. Iran was patiently waiting on the side, yet they were concerned about what's happening in Gaza. So he indicated that they will respond decisively. I'm just checking whether we got Professor Hussain back on air. Professor, are you back on air? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Professor, are you back on air?
Yes, I am. It's
Okay.
getting,
Yeah, we just got a bad line to you, but we can hear you quite clearly now. Perhaps you want to just give your comments on the Iran-Israel conflict. Exactly.
Yeah.
What's your take in
now
that?
let me, yes,
Go for it,
okay.
Professor.
Now, okay. Well, Mr. Sacoor, thank you for inviting me and be the host of the new focus to share some thoughts. One of the gravest humanitarian crises of our time.
Correct.
The situation in Gaza is highlighting the broader Palestinian suffering and genocide complaint based on case lodged by the South Africa at the ICJ. And since the 13th of June this year, further complicated by Israel attacking Iran unprovoked and in gross violation of international rules of engagement. I will elaborate with the permissible time on the Palestinian situation, especially in the light of devastating Gaza-Israel war that erupted on the 7th of 2023. The Gaza-Israel war is a significant and sensitive issue, and I will talk about it in a respectful, informative, and balanced radio talk show for new focus. Remember, listeners, this is not simply a political or geopolitical issue. Is it, at its core, a human issue? And as a South African, we have witnessed our long nation's road from oppression to democracy. I speak as a peace propagator from the heart and the truth. The brutal war is deeply emotional and a polarizing topic, one that touches on identity, history, justice, trauma, and above all, humanity. Respected listeners of this focus, I, as a humble peace propagator from Durban, I invite you to a journey with me through the latest development in the Palestine-Israel war, now expanded into Iran in the conflict, and unfolding human crisis in Gaza, both of which cry out not only for attention, but for action, wisdom, and above all, for peace. Since June 13, 2025, was last Friday, tension between Israel have escalated dangerously, and Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, targeting more than 100 sites across Iran, nuclear facility, military bases, and missile storage depot. Iran responded with Operation Cliff Trouble 3, unleashing over 150 missiles, 100 drones towards Israel, Haifa, and beyond. At the receiving end, the death toll is mounting. Civilians, children, mothers, journalists, students, again are caught in the crossfire. Both parties in the major country, in the major cities, are reeling from fear and loss of life. Global powers are positioning like vultures on the sidelines in the Kruger National Park. The United Nations has redirected its aircraft carrier to the Mediterranean. Britain's Royal Air Force stands on high alert. Germany has detected parliamentarians for wearing attire identifying with Palestinians. And we as indifferent and unconcerned South Africans supporting this country as the regional war looms. Meanwhile, call for restraint from United Nations, European Union, China, Turkey, across diplomatic sphere. But is anybody listening? No. President Donald Trump has stated today that US has total control and complete control of the skies over Iran. They have diverted the fleets of warships from South China Sea towards Iran and B-2 stealth bombers which has a range of 960 kilometers without refueling to its Middle East allies in the Arab country. Each of these doomsday planes carry 2 times 2,400 kilograms bombs or bunker busters ready for deployment on Iran. International strategists are of the opinion that Israel is formed for this hypersonic bomber. Therefore, US is directly complicit in the war and it aims to do what they did in Iraq, in Syria, in Vietnam, in Cambodia, and used 2 Japanese cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, on the 6th and 9th of August, respectively, in the past decade, without any remorse. He wants Iran's total unconditional surrender in the war which was started and followed by Israel. The Iranian Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khomeini, is rightly defending Iran against collective colonial oppression and ethnophobia on the basis of Iran nuclear armament, which have been discussed for the last 30 years, as reiterated repeatedly by the leader of Israel. Protest for Israel, a world response. Why Mrs. Why millions across the world usually protest, not just against the war, but peace with justice. It is interesting to note, listeners, in The Hague, over 150,000 protesters formed a red line march past the Peace Palace, demanding and the complicity of United States, Britain, and Germany in Gaza's destruction. Then we have the global march to Gaza, intended to convert peacefully at Rafah. 4,000 from 80 countries marched through Egypt and Libya. Many were blocked or severely beaten. Yet their resolve has been strengthened. Also note this: in Israel itself, Jewish and Arab countries have taken to the streets calling for ceasefire and hostage return, risking arrest by IDF in the process. Here in South Africa, people of conscience have joined hands from Cape Town to Durban to Johannesburg. Solidarity marches, prayer vigil, and interfaith rally. One message made clear: Gaza lives no matter what. Gaza lives matter, and peace must prevail. It isn't a global outrage. It is a human impotence made visible. And Mr. Sacoor, if I may, recollect our Quranic and South African vision for peace. The Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah states, fight in the way of Allah those who fight you, but do not regret. Indeed, Allah does not like transgression. In Surah Al-Anfal, they incline toward peace, they incline toward it also, and trust in Allah. These verses remind us that justice will now become vengeance, and peace is always preferable for that if we are sincere. Our beloved South African, one such a apartheid knows strength of principle, resistance with the dignity of reconciliation. Our late leader, Madiba said, and I'll remind all of you listeners, our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of Palestinians. Can we now allow another nation to suffer dispossession, siege, ongoing genocide while we look other way? We, as South Africans, with our own painful history of apartheid, with beyond parallels in Palestinian experience, our government has taken a firm diplomatic stance, including support for the case against Israel at the International Criminal Court. While legal debate continues, the moral call is clear. Civilian lives must be protected, accountability must be pursued, and the 7-decade-long occupation of the aggressor Israel must end. Remember, just as in the apartheid, the Israeli informers in our institutions, their rights and nominal in South Africa, in religious bodies, large businesses, beware of them and safeguard their interests, not humanity. In closing, to you listeners of New Critical Focus, this is not just a Middle Eastern issue. It is a human issue. When people live without freedom, security, or hope, the world is diminished. Let us not allow history to repeat ourselves by turning ourselves in silence, the silence of the pulpit, and as a peace negotiator and propagator and a South African, I feel morally obliged and compelled to say something. Silence in the face of suffering is complicity. I believe in a future where justice and peace are shared. May we, as South Africans, stand strong and speak with empathy, act in courage, and never dare to imagine a future where Israelis and Palestinians live not in fear, but in peace and peace. The question often is asked, is peace possible? Certainly, but only with justice, dignity, truth, and without foreign interference and partnership. Many Jews and Muslims throughout the world want peace, not domination. We as Muslims must be guided by the religious teaching of all Abrahamic faiths, must amplify those voices. What can ordinary South Africans do? The answer is a wide challenge, but speak out in support of humanitarian causes. Build interfaith universities. Forget your sectarian differences between Shia and Sunni Muslims, as some religious leaders are propagating. It is not our war. We are all members of the human race. We are not a separate species. Support the South African government who had the guts, the temerity to launch the ICC case of genocide against Israel, and continue to support Iran and Israel and Palestine, and hold government accountable to international law. Remember, business that you give to Britain, Germany, to Americans, 2 Palestinians are killed by you supporting their businesses and their products from the company from their company. Oh, great Madiba said, and I say it again, no freedom is incomplete without freedom of Palestine. Beloved listeners, it is not a time for silence. It is a time for solidarity in action. We must call on side to end civilian targeting. They are mercilessly killed while waiting for food and walking down death corridors to be shot by the Israeli rockets as practice targets. Open humanitarian corridor to Gaza. Resume honest diplomacy and hold violators of international law accountable. Again, I reiterate that every rand you spend on British companies, German companies, US, and even Saudi Arabia. Eventually killing 2 Palestinians waiting for food aid presently. Let us echo the prayers of Prophet Musa, may peace be upon him. Oh my Lord, expand my breast for me, ease my task, and untie the knot from my tongue so that they may understand my speech. Surah Kahf. Tonight, may your heart be moved, all listeners, and no August gathering in the studio, a live audience. I could not attend, and I am doing it from home, and may your voices be empowered. I am just a servant of peace, and may we each become builders of peace in word and in deed. With peace, shalom, and go well, my friend. Thank you, Mr. Sacoor, for giving me the third time. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them based on my extensive study of the Palestinian suffering over the last 40 or 50 years. Thank you.
Professor Hussain VAWDA, some very pertinent comments on the Israel-Gaza-Iran conflict. We thank you for joining us this evening and sharing your expert knowledge and research in the subject. I know that you spent 10 months in hospital with a freak illness and you were on the respirator for a considerable period of time with a pulmonary problem. And our listeners will appreciate the fact that you came on air and sincerely articulated your comments and views, which were so important. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you complete shifa from your illness. And however you expressed yourself this evening, we at Radio Ansaar International and our listeners appreciate the input you've given us, Professor. We will interview you in the future, but we make du'as that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you complete shifa. And as a civic and human rights and political activist, you continue with the good work. We know that, and the listeners all know you're a retired professor in medicine, having spent a considerable period in your life serving the people of this world on the medical fraternity. Now you're concerned about the political and humanitarian issues in Palestine. We thank you for joining us, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep you healthy and fit to continue with your good work. Professor, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Inshallah, Ameen, Jazakallah, and blessings for you and your listeners and the studio audience. Jazakallah khair.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. That was Professor Hussain VAWDA. We apologized for the disruption and the unclear. Professor has recovered from being on a respirator for 10 months. He notified me, he was a regular guest in my show, that he sent me a message, he's just recovered. And obviously, he's not as articulate as he was when he was a lecturer, but he got the message through. Sumaya, I want you to comment. He spoke about some pertinent issues, those listeners that were listening carefully, and we must apologize because Professor, in the sick condition, spoke from his heart, and he made some pertinent comments on our role. Now, it comes in a hadith of Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam. When oppression takes place, that is one of three things we can do. Firstly, we must stop it physically. If we can't, that is the highest form of Iman. Then we should talk about it, have protest marches, do something about it. And the third, the least we can do is make du'as. Now, you obviously had a program on Sunday and you spoke about the protest marches. How important are the contributions of people worldwide, including South Africans, towards creating the awareness of the atrocities that are taking place? And we know the kind of atrocities that are taking place in Gaza. And now people are moving very, very conveniently, the sharp focus away from the humanitarian side. People are starving, people are getting massacred, women and children are being killed. Those that are going for humanitarian aid are being shot at and killed. And you have a child carrying the father's body and saying, what do? I'm all alone. Perhaps you just want to give a brief comment before the news break.
Professor touched, as you can say, he's ill, he's recovering. He touched from a human point of view, where put everything away, think of the Abrahamic faith, whether you're a Christian, Jew, or Muslim, and think about your fellow human brothers and sisters. Because it's the worst thing ever, most painful, vile, ugly, cruel thing when you are slaughtering brothers and sisters, mothers, babies, and it's an ongoing thing, and there is no help, assistance from any one of our global leaders. And as we said, it has shifted now more into political, onto nuclear warfare, onto other issues, onto other countries. But first and foremost, his thing is we need to look at it from a humanitarian point of view. And the basic necessities, that's food, that's shelter, that's oxygen, that's air, that's just existing. And our brothers and sisters in Gaza are finding it so difficult to exist. And as you just mentioned, it's an everyday thing where when you think about it, when we first started looking on our social media, on videos, on pictures of decapitated bodies, of limbs, we couldn't look at our phone. If you think about it, even on groups, people were fighting and arguing, how can you post this? I'm blocking you from this group. But that is a reality now. Have we, as citizens or people from another continent or from another country, have we become so immune to this? It's like, oh yeah, whatever, and we're continuing with our lives. So his thing is, and this is 100% true, we need to continue, remember our brothers and sisters, not only in Gaza, around the world, because the suffering is real. And it shouldn't exist, especially in today's times. But again, it's still there, and everyone is trying their best. When you think about it, demands on the humanitarian corridor to end the Israeli blockage and the pressure on global institutions to halt the genocidal war in Gaza is still continuing. We haven't reached anywhere. What is it? Almost 2 years. And all the organizers of everything, whether they're activists, political leaders, members of different embassies, parliament, individuals who are so passionate, still remain strictly non-violent, and they are still mobilizing the peace protest. And that is quite amazing, because no one has started, the man on the ground, they haven't yet started fighting and rebelling against it. They just want, peace. For listeners out there, United for Palestine are doing a hell of a lot on the ground. When you think about it, for almost 30 years, our president, brother Abdul Velodia, he has dedicated almost 30 years into the struggle. And our group is really, really active. And you can follow it, United for Palestine. We have our own channel, and they are close to like almost 3,500, going on to 4,000, where we are getting immediate update of what's happening currently. And we as South Africans, we need to be active. And you were mentioning something about what is our duty. Well, foremost, when you think about it, it's not a religious, besides us being Muslims and being our religious duty to stand for what is correct, to stand for our haqq. We as Muslims, if we keep quiet, we are just like the oppressors. So you rather stand up. No one's telling you to take a gun and shoot someone, but stand up for what you believe by protesting, by making dua, and making the next brother and sister, regardless of their race, their religion, making them aware of what is happening in Gaza and around the world. And by that, you're creating knowledge and awareness. And eventually, inshallah, with time, there will be immense pressure to stop this and to halt this, and for our leaders around the world to sit together peacefully and, try to get rid of what's going on.
No, Sumaya, I just want to close our discussion before the news break. I know we're over our time. This conflict between Iran and Israel, which has now taken center stage, is in its sixth day, with both sides vowing to continue their attacks. Now, Iran's supreme leader warned Israel that Tehran will harshly retaliate against Israel's attack, saying, "We will show the Zionists no mercy."
Yeah.
Prof mentioned there's no time for the difference between Shias and Sunnis, etc. It is basically a war to fight the oppressors and for justice to prevail. Now, in terms of those protest marches that you spoke about that have been taking place, particularly the one that was stopped by Egypt, being a Muslim country, there's a group of a couple of thousand people, many from South Africa. We'll interview Maulana Ali shortly.
Yeah.
Went out and they were halted by Egypt, being complicit with Israel. Yet they had a long-standing war against Israel, and now they're becoming like, no-showers, and they're stopping all these protest marches that are taking place. And the end result is that the Palestinians are dying of starvation. because there thousands of trucks with humanitarian aid are prevented to cross the Gaza border or the Rafah border and to get aid to the people. And when people are going for aid that the US and Israelis are providing, they're making them be like dogs, chasing after bones, etc. Now, in terms of the flotilla, just briefly, for 2 minutes before we cross for the news, that was also stopped. And there's also indications that other countries are going to send aid. Now, Israel on the one side is concentrating on the genocide in Gaza. On the other side, they're attacking Israel. They're threatening to attack Pakistan. And people are saying Israel is trying to be the superpower of the world, aided by US. Now, we know, and I want you to conclude on this, Sumaya, that we have a powerful weapon as Muslims. That is our du'as. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in control of the entire world. And if Allah says kun, He can bring any nation down to the ground. And in terms of the action that Allah took against Pharaoh when Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was being chased towards the Red Sea, and there was nowhere for him to go with his followers. And Allah opened up pathways for him to cross and drown Pharaoh. So that time is not very far off, where if we are sincere as Muslims, we do what we can physically, as you mentioned, and engage in these protest marches, send aid to Palestine, and support the fight against oppression. At least we will be doing our little bit here, and in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whatever is within our means, we can do. Your closing comments on that, Sumaya.
Well, it's absolutely important. Again, we as South Africans and South African Muslims, or just a human being, we coming from, everyone goes on about this, but we are coming from a background from apartheid. We lived through it. We know what we went through. The struggle continues. So we need to stand so firmly. And when you think about it, South Africa, our previous governments, Nelson Mandela, all of us had allegiance with Palestine. And, we always said we are only free if Palestine is free. So we need to stand. We need to do whatever we have to do. One would say this doesn't concern us. It's another country. You have these comments. If you are talking with your colleagues at work or anyone, it's shocking that people, educated people, influential people belonging to professions will still say, oh, it doesn't concern us. It's not in our country. Oh, well, everything is from Israel. But they don't see the bigger picture. The bigger picture. This is a human being. It's not a robot. It's not a man-made something. It's something real. Where when you see people are just being killed, slaughtered, and none of us can do anything. So we need to instill this. June 16 just went by, Youth Day. Our young adults, our future leaders of South Africa, we need to get them involved, to be active. It starts from home. It starts right here. It starts with your neighbor, where become active. You talk a lot about the Ratepayers Association, and I mentioned this before. I think one of your guests, Brother Abdul Valodia, who's also the president for UFP, he mentioned, why start big and feel you can't do it? Start with your neighbor. Start something basic, like, sort out the garbage on the road, see to the elderly. So it starts small. And we as a nation, we should feel so empowered. They say himmat, strength, that we are South Africans and we are the movers of this. And for us just to go there and represent the ICJ, that's like a hell of a lot. It's brown. I wouldn't say brownie points, but we can do it. We can make a difference, because right now, people around the world, political leaders, activists, everyone wants to be part of the South African convoy. And alhamdulillah, when you think about it, regardless what, we had South African activists who went there to the border of Rafah, even though we knew 70% it's impossible for us to cross over. But they took the time to be there. I mean, knowing that we don't know what can happen while we are protesting there, while we are there. It wasn't 100% safe, but we went there and we did our bit. And we should continue doing our bit, as teachers, as educators, as community leaders, as members of different organizations. We need to encourage our people to stand up for what is right. Because generally what happens is when you speak up And when you stand for the truth, you stand alone. And when you think about it, I mean, I'm saying the way it is, corruption is out there, especially in our country with everything. I knew some of our guests will probably know, they're on the political front here in SA. We need to stand up for what's right. And if we all of us mobilize and stand up together, inshallah, with one vision and mission as a human being, as a citizen, we can overcome so many obstacles, and we can put an end or prevent or lessen the ills of society and become a better nation, not only nationally, but also internationally. And it might not make change now, but inshallah, maybe, when you work towards something, could be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, or 20 years. And that is the whole idea of being an activist.
Sumaya Khan, shukran for joining us. As an educator, you wore your political activist, civic activist cap this evening, shared some very valuable information with us. I know it's a cold day, and you normally have your program, School Matters on a Tuesday, and it's unusual for you to leave home and come to the studio at 9 o'clock. But I think you shared some very valuable information with our listeners today. We thank you for joining us. As the chairperson of United for Palestine, where you are sort of quite significantly involved on the Palestinian issue, now with the Iran issue, we thank you for joining us and contributing to the effort to fight oppression. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you the help to continue with this, because it's such an important, and a young lady, standing up and doing this type of work. It's a message to our others out there. And I know there's a lot of young activists that are doing this work. So we thank you for joining us. We wish you everything of the best. And inshallah, we'll have you in future programs talking about such issues and giving us update.
Yeah.
Right.
Jazakallah, this is not just a protest. It's, a message of unwavering support for Gaza and its people. So we all of us just got to say no to displacement of Palestinian people, and, no to liquidation of the Palestinian cause. And, so we all of us just need to try to do our best for humanity. And inshallah, this world is not forever. We still got to answer to the Almighty, and just doing good, being good. That's sawab, and that's blessings on its own. So once again, Jazakallah for having me on News in Focus.
Thank you for joining us, and we wish you everything of the best. And inshallah, we'll have you back in News in Focus in not too a distant future. On that note, Sumaya will be leaving us. She's got other commitments to attend to. We'll take a short break for the news. I know we're taking the news a little bit later, but some important subjects we were chatting. And inshallah, after the news break, we'll continue with News in Focus.
Radio Al Ansar, 24/7, 365.
An informative Islamic global perspective. This is Al Ansar News.
Breaking news this hour, the 18th of June, the news from Durban, 90.4 FM, Pietermaritzburg, 105.6 FM. Two pupils have been stabbed in separate incidents, America Monina. A learner has been rushed to hospital after he was allegedly stabbed and robbed while walking home from school in Phoenix. Authorities say the 17-year-old had just finished writing exams and was stabbed near Gandhi Park today. It's understood that his school bag and cell phone were taken. Paramedics from the Reaction Unit South Africa attended to him. Local security spokesperson Pro Baram says the learner managed to walk to the Phoenix Highway where he collapsed. At the same time, in Gauteng, the Education Department has announced that a grade 11 pupil had been stabbed to death outside a school in Pretoria East. It's understood that yet another student who was marked as absent arrived at the school as learners were boarding scholar transport and stabbed the child. The Gauteng Education spokesperson Steve Mabona says he died on arrival at the hospital. More news, 5 men are in court following Cleveland's killings. The 5 men convicted of killing 8 people at the Cleveland's hostel in Umlazi face sentencing at the High Court in Durban today. The group faced 9 murder charges but was found guilty on 8 counts in March. The victims were killed in June 2023, targeted for refusing to give up bed spaces in the hostel. Earlier today, the judge says the accused persons are not remorseful of their crime. KwaZulu-Natal National Prosecuting Authority Spokesperson Natasha Kara has this to say on the matter.
The sentence is definitely a victory for the NPA here in KZN. As you rightfully said, the accused were each sentenced to 8 terms of life imprisonment, as well as 15 years in total for the firearm-related charges. So we do believe that justice has been done today. A matter where there was violence at the Glebelands hostel and the accused were subsequently sentenced. So as the court mentioned today, hostels are supposed to be a safe environment, affordable environment for people that work in businesses nearby, and obviously over time that has changed. So as the NPA, we welcome that call that the court has made for law enforcement and the justice cluster as a whole to take the issues happening there seriously, so that the hostels can revert to their original reputation, being a safe space.
More news now. There is growing concern over the rising price of food despite the country's overall inflation rate remaining steady in May. Stats say earlier today revealed that the consumer inflation remained unchanged at 2.8% last month, with the annual rate for food increasing from 4 to 4.8%. The biggest contributors to the rise in prices are meats, specifically beef. Maize meal and vegetables also saw notable increases. Meanwhile, economist Wandile Slobo says the recent increases are in line with expectations and may be short-lived due to improving local and global supplies, temporary poultry import restrictions, and easing grain and oil prices. Meanwhile, the government is partially lifting its ban on poultry imports from Brazil starting from tomorrow, Thursday. More is now. National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa, NUMSA affiliated workers at DENEL are staging a protest outside their headquarters today, calling for a 7% wage increase. Reporters, they have been demanding a salary increase in the last 5 years without success. The union is expected to meet with the management of DENEL for negotiations. NUMSA says it decided to lead a march to DENEL after it agreed to a wage increase earlier this year but did not follow through. Spokesperson of NUMSA, Pagamile Hlubi Machola, says DENEL is now proposing an inflation-based increase instead. And finally, international story leader of the Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Sayyidi Ali Khamenei, in a message today says the Iranian nation will firmly stand against an imposed war. In a televised message amid the continued Israeli aggression against the Islamic Republic, Ayatollah Khamenei says the Iranian nation will never surrender to any form of imposition. In the wake of continued Israeli aggression against the Islamic Republic, the leader, Khamenei, commended the Iranian people for their composed, courageous, and timely conduct. He says the brave response of people reflected the nation's growing maturity as well as its spiritual and intellectual strength. The weather tonight, it's 20 degrees. A quick reminder of our top story. A learner has been rushed to hospital after he was allegedly stabbed and robbed while walking home from school in Phoenix. That's the news.
Audio stream across the world on radioalansar.co.za.
This hadith is sponsored by Ashraful Aid, International Humanitarian Organization.
حديث أدي قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم دع ما يريبك إلى ما لا يريبك. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said, leave out those things which are doubtful for those that are not doubtful. If a person is in doubt about whether something is permissible or not, he should stay away from it. Use only things that are not doubtful. Stay away from doubtful foods. Do not eat such food which you are not sure of.
This hadith is sponsored by Ashraful Aid, International Humanitarian Organization.
Are you looking for a meaningful way to fulfill your zakat obligation? Look no further than Ashraful Aid. With our trusted track record, your zakat reaches those who need it the most in the most honorable and dignified manner. Visit our website at www.ashrafulaid.org.
Sunnah a Day, proudly brought to you by Sunpick, 100% pure sunflower cooking oil. Sunpick, cook more with less.
मेरे नबी प्यारे नबी सुन्नत तेरी दुनिया दी.
Sunnah a day. If food falls onto the floor, it should be picked up, cleaned, and eaten. It should not be left for shaitan.
Sunnah a Day, proudly brought to you by Sunpick, 100% pure sunflower cooking oil. Sunpick, cook more with less.
Imagine this. You're putting together a 7-color meal, from the creamy pasta to the glazed carrots and flavorful onion gravy. This entire meal is made with our 100% pure extra virgin olive oil from our La Familia range, bringing outstanding quality and taste to your kitchen. Shop La Familia 100% pure extra virgin olive oil at any leading supermarkets near you. La Familia, heart of the home.
Radio Ansaar.
Listen to News in Focus on Radio Ansaar, Durban 90.4 and Petermaritzburg 105.6 FM every Wednesday from 8 p.m. with Yunus Sacoor. That's 8 p.m. every Wednesday. Radio Ansaar, keeping you informed.
Allah, 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 Allah. تنہا ہوں میں اور امتحان لاکھوں تنے ہیں سامنے بیٹھا ہوں میں مایوس کن آئے نہ کوئی مجھے تھامنے اللہ اللہ تو میری سن لے صدا حسبنا اللہ ونعم الوکیل حسبنا اللہ ونعم الوکیل حسبنا اللہ ونعم الوکیل نعم المولى ونعم النصير حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير معیوب ہوں تیرا کرم پردہ رکھا عزت بھی دی بڑھ کے دیا اوقات سے دولت بھی طاقت بھی اور وقت بھی کر دے خطا ہر معاف تو فہرست اسیاں کو چھوڑ دے اللہ اللہ تو میری سن لے صدا حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير رنگینیوں خود غرضیوں میں ہے گزاری یہ عمر ہے آرزو بس ایک یہی کر دوں تیرے نام شام و سحر تسکین دل حاصل کروں رخ اپنی جانب تو موڑ دے اللہ اللہ تو میری سن لے صدا حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير لب پہ رہے ذکر و دعا اور تجھ سے میں ڈرتا رہوں کر کے عمل قرآن پہ جنت کی راہوں پہ چلتا رہوں خدمت کروں اسلام کی پچھتاوے کا غم توڑ دے اللہ اللہ تو میری سن لے صدا حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير रोता रहा सजदों में जो दिल में लिए उम्मत का गम पढ़ता रहूं मैं तो फतन अपने नबी पे दुरूद हर कदम हो रूह जब तन से जुदा जन्नत की जानिब चले दौड़ कर अल्लाह अल्लाह तू मेरी सुन ले सदा.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to News in Focus live on Radio Ansaar International, broadcasting on the frequency Durban 90.4 FM, Peter Marisburg 105.6 FM, and streaming on www.alansar.org.za. We're live on Facebook and indeed on YouTube. The name is Yunus Sacoor, and we continue on the rest of our program. Before we continue, I'd like to once again apologize. Professor HUSSAIN VAWDA, he recovered from a 10-month illness, being on a respirator and with serious pulmonary issues. And he has been a regular guest in my program. And because of his, particular health condition, he sounded very unclear. But the sincerity in which he expressed himself, we have to understand, being a civic activist, a political activist, and an activist of note, being a professor in medicine and recovering from a serious medical condition. And he chose to accept our invitation to come on air. Let's appreciate the message that he gave us rather than the manner in which he came across on air. And sometimes you come across in that manner, but the sincerity is what really impacts on our listeners. We're going to delve on a few other important issues affecting us. And I have with me live in the studio Councillor ERNEST. He's a councillor in Ward 27 at eThekwini. And we're gonna hammer ERNEST on a couple of issues, and one of the issues we're gonna hammer him on taxpayers' funds being squandered. eThekwini's costly legal battle with daily double trading, a threat to black-owned businesses. Now, the eThekwini municipality is under fire after it was revealed that 23 million rand has been spent on legal fees to dispute 30 million payout to double trading. So you got an equivalent amount you have to pay in legal fees to a black-owned electrical company. This controversy highlights a troubling misuse of taxpayer funds and serves as a stark example of how government authorities can inadvertently stifle small black-owned enterprises in South Africa. Critics are labeling the municipality's decision to engage in an extensive legal battle as a wasteful expenditure, questioning the accountability of officials who are responsible for managing public resources. Now, we know very well that the performance of officials has been cause for concern in various municipalities, including eThekwini, which is one of the biggest metros. Now, the repercussions of this legal battle is there are profound implications that could arise from the municipality's decision. One glaring consequence is the financial burden on taxpayers. The total legal costs, now soaring to 23 million, are likely to be passed on to citizens, the ratepayers. The potential increase in municipal rates or cutbacks in services could further alienate relationship between the community and local government. Now, what we've been chatting about for a number of months is poor service delivery by eThekwini municipality, and councillors have been coming and raising issues. Now, ERNEST, being from the opposition party or part of the government of national unity, has indicated that the municipality is not quite in that category yet, because they're in alliance with the ANC and the EFF, and those decisions are taken at that level. So the DA becomes an opposition of sorts. So we're growing and coming into local government elections 2026 soon, and we got to hold the municipality accountable. So I'd like to welcome ERNEST. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to News in Focus, ERNEST.
Wa alaikum salam. Jazakallah for having me on again, Yunus. I always enjoy coming to the station because we really do dive into these things.
Yes. Now, because I know what's happening and I know the kind of monies that are being wasted, and we don't want to go into the deep side of inefficiencies in the municipality, but to spend 23 million to recover 30 million, that is really a huge problem, because it doesn't make financial sense. And I've got our economist HASSAN seated here, and he's going to make a meal out of this thing, because HASSAN says, to start off with, are we really getting, value for money? So tell us exactly what has happened there, ERNEST. Is the legal department really don't know what they're doing, or they're just being given a mandate by the city authorities to go and defend something that, is a huge problem?
Well, we need to look at things in a bit of context. Now, it's going to sound like I'm protecting the municipality here, but anybody doing anything will always go through the process of engaging legal representation to fight something. Now, the municipality doesn't consider that, they consider taking the legal route irregular or wasteful expenditure, considering that you're being taken to task legally or through the legal channels because of 1, 2, 3, whatever has arisen. Otherwise, every court case that the municipality has ever faced over the last 50 years would fall into the category of irregular expenditure. But I think the issue at hand is simply accountability for the contracts that we have in place, 1, 2, effective oversight over those contracts and no interference. The reality of it is people have gotten contracts through, I would want to say the back door, but however they did it. And the issue is here that it's costing the municipality, because when you arbitrarily cancel something like that, especially before its expiration or the end of life of the contract, you open yourself up to litigation. And whether you're getting kickbacks or not, the point of it is that the person was appointed to do something, whether the issue was it was a bloated contract or not. And with that's what we've been speaking about over, I think the last year or two, that a lot of these contracts that are with the municipality, and there's a lot of speculation, but in essence, how that would work is that you would have to, in essence, incentivize why you get this particular contract. And it's obviously through political connections and through the political backdoor to say, I'll put my paperwork in. And that's exactly what led to the Zandile Gumede saga and why so many people are involved, because you cannot be stealing by yourself. There's always a chain of people involved. And that's where all of this litigation comes from. So the municipality will turn around and say, well, we have to defend ourselves, therefore it's not, that amount of money is not litigation, is not wasteful expenditure. But the money that the fees on top of it, the interest on the like, well, that's another can of worms by itself. And the legal department can be full of it, but the reality is they are problematic, but they, as I said, they do say that they have to defend themselves, and that's not a regular expenditure.
Now, Hassan, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome in News in Focus after a long break.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Hassan, the Auditor General has mentioned in the past that the municipalities have been cited for wasteful, irregular expenditure, and you've alluded to the fact in previous meetings and programs we had that that's cause for concern, because irregular expenditure can impact considerably on the rates that the municipality charges, particularly the shortfall in between revenue and expenditure, and the deficit is recovered from the rates increase. Now we know that there's basically a lot of complaints about all increases that have taken place, whether it's electricity, water, and rates. Although the municipality is trying its level best to curtail a double-figure increase. Having said that, from the point of view of the ratepayer, to hear disturbing news about wasteful expenditure, and on the one side, minimal service delivery, the ratepayer is complaining that we're not getting, value for money in the rates we pay, and a lot of them are battling to make ends meet because of the high degree of unemployment. From a financial perspective, in a particular municipality, how do we react to the situation?
Sure.
Hassan?
The thing is, we can only continue firstly to raise our voices and continue to highlight the issues that are noted. So I'll give you just mentioned the Auditor General. One of the departments that has been particularly bad and noted again by the Auditor General has been the Department of Water and Sanitation. If you look at over the last 5 years, irregular expenditure just in this department has been 3.7 billion rands.
And that is for the Tekwani water and
No,
sanitation.
the department, they're talking about just from a national perspective.
Right.
But the fact is, just one department over a few years, just irregular expenditure, fruitful and wasteful expenditure noted, 3.7 billion rands. That's a hell of a lot of money. Another thing to note is this. So, I mean, you highlighted earlier about the spending on a 13 million rand debt, which apparently the services was done or not. We're not sure, but apparently it was done. But you're spending 20 million and then interest, they're charging 10% per annum interest of that. That's going to 23 million or it could potentially be more by the time they settle it. It's no sense is being used in terms of, weighing up the pros and the cons and managing the money properly. It's because there's the culture of, it's not our money. We can spend it and how we want, and we can use it. I mean, the other day we talked about the deputy president. I mean, that's highlight. I mean, it's across all the news in terms of travel, and it's not only the deputy president. It's been now it's coming out in terms of we've become a nation where the public servants, and particularly those high up, they love travel, and they seem to spend very, very nicely on the best that travel can afford on all taxpayers' expense. It's ridiculous amounts of money that is being spent when we have such a tight budget, and that's the biggest issue. Now, I come back again to the whole issue around municipalities and spending properly. Now, the president had put in place this Operation Vulindlela. They're doing work currently in terms of understanding money that's been spent from 2010 to 2024. So over the last 14 years, they've been looking at that. They've seen that revenue from property rates has increased by 91% over that 14 years. Service charges, so whether it's your refuse and those type of charges, has increased by 101% over that period. So revenue has increased quite substantially for the municipalities and the like over that period of time. SA cities they're looking at in particularly. Guess what though? There's been a 31% drop in spending on infrastructure during the last 14 years. 31% drop. Now, imagine taking into account inflation and the like, how much more that thing has dropped. But 31% drop in infrastructure spending from 2010 to 2024. That's a massive decline. But staff costs has risen by 84% during that period of time. Now we look at it, our major cities are running out of cash. They've effectively becoming employment agencies when you look at it. So money is coming in terms of the revenue that's generated for rates and refuse and these things. And essentially speaking, they're just paying the biggest part of the bill is now just going towards the wage bill and the salary bill. But it's not going towards infrastructure. And that's the biggest issue we're facing. Now, we spoke about 2-3 weeks ago about eTequeni mentioned, we're going to reduce it from 16% to 13% increase. The fact is, inflation came out today, 2.8% annual inflation, CPI came out. And they're talking about 13% increases for certain, for whether it's refuse or sanitation, anywhere between 10 and 13%. That is 3, 4, 5 times more than what the annual CPI is. How can you justify that? You need to take hard decisions and cut certain parts of the wage force. That has to happen because it's an inefficient wage force that's being paid a bloated salary. And it's not only in the municipalities that's happening yet. Look at what happened in Transnet this past week. Government buckled in terms of the negotiations that happened with Transnet. They were pushing. Transnet said, we're going to go in with a strike. What happens with the strike? Now, they've agreed to a 6% per annum increase over the next 3 years. That's ridiculous. 6% per annum increase when we're sitting with a massive budget deficit. Our debt levels are at substantially high levels, but we've agreed to one of the state-owned enterprises, but that's been inefficient, that has cost this economy so much over the last number of years, but we've increased 6% per annum for the labor force there, because we are concerned, we don't want to risk going to having an issue with the trade unions. Now, we need to be realistic in this year. We need to manage, if it was a private sector company, and it's happening currently. Look at what's happening with Goodyear. Goodyear is looking to close down their plant that's been around for a number of years. Potentially 900 people will lose their jobs. But it's happening across many other private sectors where tough times they have to take tough decisions. But it's not being taken in the public sector employment, whether it's the municipalities, whether it's the state-owned enterprises. We have to take those decisions because, and more so because of the public enterprises, because our debt levels are unsustainable. Yep. You cannot keep on taxing people and tell the South African population out there that we're going to continue to increase taxes, whether it's VAT or other forms of taxes and indirect taxes that we're going to get. You need to take decisions. If it means that you have to cut the labor for a certain point, you have to cut it and get back to a level which is where there's productivity. One of the issues that the public sector has, why don't they want performance-based remuneration? That's an issue. If you want this increase of this, no problem. Achieve targets of volumes and productivity and the like, and you'll get that. They're not agreed to it. They want guaranteed. We cannot go on like this. It's unsustainable. And the problem is not us, but our future generations, our kids and our grandkids later on are going to be paying for this for years to come because of the unsustainable debt levels that we're facing.
Honestly, brother Hassan saying that you must reduce your labor levels, and we always called for looking at top management. Are they bloated? The performance of the city manager in terms of etiquette, and if you analyze the staff costs and other associated costs, it's quite a significant sum. And people are employing their colleagues, and it's cadre deployment, and there's discrimination at all levels, and these are not being addressed. So this bloated staff complement in the various municipalities, exacerbated by irregular expenditure, wasteful expenditure, it's constituting quite a significant amount of the budget. And we know that many of you all are part of the opposition of the municipalities. But can't you, through your party leadership, go to the provincial union or the unification, the GNU of province, or the province of national unity, and you'll have representatives there. You have 2 MECs from the DA, and you've got 3 or 4 from IFP that can intervene, because I believe that the MEC for corporate governance has asked Etequeni to explain and surcharge, set an example, this 28 odd million or 23 odd million to those that were responsible for being negligent. Because my recollection of how the legal departments work is they consult with the legal department and the head of that department to find out, are the documents in place before they take the matter up. And in this case, it was basically a case that you're going to lose before you really fight it in court. So you're basically appointing advocates, like that. Other departments are also incurring a lot of it. So what is the reaction? Do you feel that as opposition parties you have to go to the GNU and ask for intervention at all levels to deal with these problems? Because what the public want to know is nothing is being done about it, and cadres are being protected. The Mayor Cyril Kaba is saying that action must be taken, but it's all talk and no action. So from the inside where you are, what is the reaction? Are people serious about doing something about it, or is this a talk shop?
I'll say one thing about the ANC. They can talk a lot, but when it comes to action, they stumble at the first rock that comes up or pebble.
And they protect their appointments.
Yeah, well, there we go. We have to look at this historically. All along, the ANC was in charge. And I'm gonna call a spade here, because blame must be placed.
Just be careful. You got an ANC MP outside. He's going to come in.
No,
and
that's
say,
fine. That's fine.
We'll give him a chance to chat. But the point we're getting at is the ratepayers are cut fall and they're up.
No, and rightly so. I mean, you know what? At the end of the day, historically, there never used to be consultation. The GNU GPU is aimed at forcing collaboration between formerly oppositional parties and ideologies. The reality of it, and it's something, and to answer your question about going through to senior leadership, when we're having issues at a local level, and one must always remember the GNU is at a national level, GPU is at a provincial level. It has trickled down to a municipal level, and I say trickled because we at a local level, and I say municipal level, we haven't sat in one room with the other parties or the leadership and stuff. We have an understanding that our mother bodies are doing what they're doing. But we always have to look at the reality of it and say, okay, how long has this thing been going on for? How much money have we wasted? What timeframes have we looked at? The people on the ground are the ones that have to bear the cost of it. And something that people may realize or may not, and it's something that came through today, was that when we were sitting in our various committees and the like, the amount of taxpayers that are expected to fit the bill, or 25% of the bill, of the budget, is probably half of the number of dependents on the system who do not contribute more to that on this, especially in eThekwini. And that obviously impacts service delivery. Unfortunately, we get to a point, all right, where people have to also accept where accountability is. But the reality is we sit with a historical problem where there are people in the municipality that we have been calling for, life skills audit, or is there compatibility audit? Because are you actually employed to do the job you're supposed to be there? And are you able to do it? Those things are not unreasonable. But what I'm increasingly finding, all right, is that on the inside, is that various systems are weaponized per whatever faction somebody is sitting on. They are weaponized against people for something small, something big. And this matter, by the way, that we're talking about, the 30 million, it went through to EXCO. EXCO voted in favor of taking it to Constitutional Court. But the reality of it is we have a legal team. I'm going back to that specifically. We have a legal team in the municipality which is tasked in defending the municipality. That's their primary job. But you cannot take something and leave it and drop the ball, because it goes back to that accountability measure of saying who was supposed to be doing oversight in this contract. Why did you drop the ball? Why did you terminate it? And for what? And why did you just leave it there on in? Because from my understanding of it, it was the municipality never made representation, and the blokes the company in question got a settlement out of it, and suddenly the municipality had to pick up the pieces. So it begs the question of accountability and why, and who dropped the ball, and why, and are they supposed to be there? And if they are there, why are they not booted out?
Shukran, Smith, on that input. Joining us in the studio is Honorable IMRAN SUBRATHIE, MP and General Secretary of United for Palestine. IMRAN, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and thank you for joining us. I know you're normally in Cape Town on various types of meetings, but you were in Durban, so we asked you to join us. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah. Thank you always, Yunus. It's a pleasure to be joining you in studio.
We've also got online Maulana Abdul Khalik Ali, President of the United Ulama Council of South Africa, also from MJC, who's just returned from a trip to Egypt, where he joined a protest march of thousands of individuals from different countries, but the Egyptian government stopped them from entering and going to the Rafah border. Maulana, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus live on Radio Al-Ansar International.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Maulana, we're delighted to have you in this late hour live on a program in Al-Ansar radio called News in Focus. I think you joined me live some months ago in the studio where we chatted about Palestine. And there's a special place for Palestine in your heart. Now, tell us briefly, we've got Brother IMRAN SUBRATHIE, our MP, with us in the studio, and he may want to add. But tell us briefly, you and many of your colleagues, brothers from Cape Town, flew over to Egypt to join this protest march in anticipation of going to the Rafah border with a view to checking whether humanitarian aid can be brought into the suffering people of Gaza. And it was quite a brave effort on your part. Perhaps you can just give us a bit of a report back on exactly what happened when you left and when you landed, explain what really happened and the disappointment. But I think you achieved the objective that you took a bold stand with other brothers and went out there. Maulana?
Yes, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Jazakumullah for Radio Al Ansar for the opportunity that you are providing us. So let me say, this is a global initiative. And the reality of the situation is that it is. Hello?
Yes, Maulana, you can go ahead. We can hear you loud and clear.
There's an echo here, man.
Okay, we're quite clear on our side, and we apologize if there's an echo on your side. But go ahead, Maulana.
So what happened is this, that this is a global initiative. It is one of its kind. In recent history, I cannot think that there has been something coordinated on this particular scale. And so the idea was connecting with the Freedom Flotilla and the Sumud, the journey convoy that has been undertaken from Algeria. This is an event to have brought the people flying into Egypt. And so the intention is that we were hoping to have drawn attention to what is currently happening in Gaza, to break the siege, to highlight the plight of the Palestinian people, and we all know that was the intention. And what the coordinators did was they facilitated country by country, asked people to register for the global march, which people did. There was a cut-off time. Those particular names were then submitted for the authorities to agree upon. And my understanding is that the registered names was submitted then to the Egyptian authority with the hope that they would approve this particular global march. There were no formal communication or response to the request that was made, but obviously the march continued because with the expectation that there were no refusal for it. However, the arrival of ours in Cairo, we were informed that there's been some activists who intimidated, some were detained. We were also told that there were heavy presences.
I think we just had a bit of a drop line there. We'll try to reconnect to it, Maulana Khalik Ali. Imran, I want to bring you in as Secretary General for United for Palestine, and you've been keeping a close eye on this march, as well as on the flotilla, that the Madeleine that was intercepted by Israel, some 185 kilometers off the coast of Gaza, and what happened there. So it looks like all attempts, by humanitarian is being blocked by the Israeli government. And we had your chairperson of the Women's League, SUMAYA Khan, chatting about it briefly, that it now becomes a serious humanitarian issue. And we have to be, diligent, and, we need to continue, the struggle continues. So before we get Maulana on the line, we'd just like to know, as the Secretary General, what's your take on the happenings, particularly with the march and the flotilla?
Yunus, the march, the flotilla, which preceded the march and subsequently the march, highlights the frustration, the agony, the pain of civil society worldwide. It highlights their frustration with their respective governments and the powers that be around the world, that governments have failed to intervene. And if one were to look at the United Nations, being the highest body of governance around the world, has failed. and it highlights the frustration of people. And I think it's very significant because it has brought together humanity at large for a common cause of social justice. So I think that's the principle around it. It is largely symbolic, in my opinion, because realistically, the Zionist state of Israel was never going to allow the flotilla or any siege to be broken by the global march, as we saw. So it's become largely symbolic, and it has, in taking place, and this is credible, and in its taking place, and I would not call it failed, but it's symbolic and it's exposed the hypocrisy, unfortunately, of the government where they were based in, they were supposed to break in. And I'm not taking the name specifically, but it's exposed the hypocrisy of those countries and the country on whose door they knocked and said, please let us in with humanitarian aid. And it's also exposed the hypocrisy of nations around there and other nations. So for me, it was hugely successful, alhamdulillah. And I think it's something that we must not stop. Remember, it takes Yunus, one enlightened, in the words of my mentor, who you always used to inspire us and say that, it takes one lit candle to light 1,000 unlit candles. But 1,000 unlit candles cannot light a single candle.
Correct.
So we learned from this that it just take one catalyst. It took one Tata Nelson Mandela to start this revolution for the freedom of South Africa. And this is where, and another profound learning we learned from this is that leaders emerge in times of crisis. Not when things are honko-dory, not when things are fine. When there's mayhem and anarchy and chaos, that's when strong leaders emerge. And this is presenting us with a unique opportunity of leaders to emerge from somewhere, to say that this is the solution to the problem. Right now, we haven't cracked it. I mean, we're seeing it's unfortunately getting from bad to worse. Now it's Iran is under fire.
Yeah. We've got Maulana Ali back on the line. Imran, sorry to disrupt you. Maulana Ali, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Are you back on air? Or he's dropped again. We're going to try to get him. So Imran, just to continue with our discussion, Maulana Ali was indicating that some of them got into the plane, got there, only to find they were stopped from going any further because others were stopped, and they found it difficult to really penetrate the situation. And it was clear that the Egyptian government were instructed by the Zionists not to allow this peaceful march to take place. And they basically want to ensure that they prevent any kind of aid going into Gaza other than the little aid that they and the US are providing. And it's causing major problems for people to go there and seek the aid. Many of them are like children are bringing their parents' dead bodies back because of the problem associated with the limited aid. Whereas if you were dealing with humans and the humanitarian touch was there, they're not providing the aid. The international community is providing the aid through those thousands of trucks that are waiting to go in and help the people. So this is, basically a travesty of justice, an oppression of the highest note. And the rest of the world cannot allow this to happen. But many of them are complicit with Israel, particularly from the West, the US and its allies. So the suggestion and the recommendations from the various Palestinian, bodies, they're trying their level best to look at ways and means. And there's also indications that many flotillas will be trying to get to Gaza. And I'm not sure whether it was Malaysia or one of these countries that said they may send 100 flotillas one after the other and see how Israel reacts. Perhaps you want to comment on that, Imran?
We must never ever stop any source of humanitarian aid or these missions. There's one profound message it continues to give to the people of Palestine, and that is the message of hope. Yunus, we must never underscore and underestimate the message, the hope, the power of the message of hope. because one of the strategies of the Zionists is to continue with this protracted violence, and sooner or later people get tired. You start suffering from activism fatigue and people lose interest, and this is what's been happening for 78 years now. To date, people just get tired of listening to the same thing, and this is exactly what the game plan is. Just keep doing it. People are going to tire. Initially there's going to be a lot of noise, a lot of marches, and sooner then people are going to get tired and life is going to go on. This is exactly the game plan. So we must never take the foot off the accelerator. We must constantly be there, because for every flotilla that's turned down, every person that comes and says, I've brought bread, I've brought flour, I've brought milk for the people that are starving, that are dying, I've brought anesthetic and come here for that woman who has to undergo a cesarean operation without anesthetic, I've just brought anesthetic, please let me in and give this to them so that she can. Every time they go and they do that and they are refused, it amplifies and it highlights the hypocrisy of the world we're living in. We're living in a world that is highly, highly polarized. There is that cabal, that gangsters that want to control the world, who believe that that group is only right, and the rest, if you're not in that cabal, you're not on that group, you can never control, you can never own nuclear weapons, you can do nothing but be their subject. The world is run by these two groups, and we will always have to challenge that status quo. The day we stop challenging the status quo is the day we ourselves will become submissive. We ourselves will be occupied. This is the concept of the mental occupation of the human mind.
Now, Imran, just to, we're running out of time, and just to conclude on the subject, the international reaction is that there's condemnation. Amnesty International Secretary General Agnes Kalamad condemned Israel's action, stating that the interception violates international law and put the safety of those on the boat at risk, including those that have marched. Diplomatic fallout: several countries, including Spain, France, and Turkey, have lodged protests questioning Israel's interception in international waters. Now, Israel continues to do this. And as you mentioned, that now they started this war with Iran, and there's a serious reaction from Iran. But a lot of people are saying they're trying to sharp focus on this Iran-Israel war and let not people focus on Gaza. And, our politicians are saying that we must not forget that this is very important, the humanitarian side in Gaza. On our side, we can try to assist, we protest, we have to make du'as, because dua is a powerful weapon of the believer to ensure. But those people that are suffering and dying as martyrs, they are onto the status of the shuhada in the high stages of Jannatul Firdaus. But those that remain behind are part of the struggle. And some commentators have said Israel cares a damn. They're thinking they could control the world. And that's exactly the way they're reacting, because it's really abysmal and crazy for one small country living in one corner of the Middle East to prevent aid to come into Gaza. And it's a serious indictment on the people out there. So you're saying that the struggle must continue, but is there any way any one of the countries that are supporting Gaza can crack the whip and say enough is enough? And I know Iran is actually commenting that we're going to take them on and let them pay the penalty. And it also includes the kind of atrocities they're committing in Gaza. So do we expect a breakthrough soon, or is Israel going to be persistent in the way they're protecting aid to go into Gaza?
Listen, I think sooner or late, inshallah, I do believe that it will burst at its seams. It is my wish and it is my hope, because I think everything that's happening right now continues to expose Israel as an oppressive force. And they step now to, without provocation, to go and bomb a sovereign country like Iran, who they expected to would have responded sooner, and Iran did not. and they stayed in their lanes. But now to go without provocation to do that, it has again, because this in your studio, you got two different colors. The contrasting of the colors makes the colors so stand out. So the fact that Iran has stayed in his lane, and the fact that Israel has gone as a bully, has now solicited the sympathy, leave the Arab countries, even Western countries that 3 years ago, before October 7, 2023, would have said that Iran is a nuclear country. It's this. It's everyone who would have painted Iran as a bad guy. If I'm talking from the West, now they don't have the same view. They say, but they were attacked without provocation. And their evidence that the international, those that regulate and monitor the nuclear have been there. It's not like their doors have been closed to any form of monitoring. So what it's done is, the point I'm saying is, gradually they are putting themselves in a hole and they burying themselves, because even their own allies, their own friends, the West has seen them for what they are, a bunch of gangsters, bullies who believe that if we can't have it, you can't have it. And I think the fact that many of the Western media have remained silent in this matter, they are confused. They don't know. They can't say, hey, we side with Iran, because that's the right thing to do, because you attack them without provocation. So they're remaining silent, which is a far cry from what they would have done a while ago. So I believe this is the signs that Israel's is starting to burst at its seams, and sooner or later they're going to be exposed. And sooner or later, my hope is countries will come together and say, you know what, we prepared to send our ships officially from our countries, not breakaway flotillas, but significant countries will send food aid and try and break the siege. So I'm hopeful, inshallah, that would happen.
This operation will come to an end sooner. I want to bring you in, Hassan. With this war, the oil prices are spiraling; they're going up, and that impacts the economic setup worldwide. Markets are reacting. Perhaps you just give us an update on how the markets have reacted, particularly in South Africa. I think the rand is not doing too bad, but I think the JSE has impacted, and also oil prices are spiraling.
Markets didn't. I think in terms of the stock markets, there was not any major movement. I think just for the day or two, you did have stock markets declining a bit, but nothing substantial, and they've sort of stabilized over the last day or two. Oil prices, on the other hand, have moved up substantially. So a week or 10 days ago, oil was trading at about $64, $65 a barrel. Today it's trading at $77 a barrel.
So it's gone up by $10.
It's moved up substantially.
So we in for petrol increases if this
the rand
continues.
Remains at the current levels of around 18 rands, and if oil remains about $75 and above, then come July, 2 weeks time, there will be a petrol.
Is this because of the curtailment of supply? And
it's
also
just mainly because of the issue around. Remember, some of the strikes in the last few days, Israel has been targeting some of the refineries and the oil reserves in Iran. So there's concern.
Iran is a big supplier of oil.
Iran is a big supplier. And the second other issue, the Strait of Hormuz. Remember, 20% of global crude supply goes through that strait. So there's always also a risk that if this war blows out of proportion and that strait closes, 20% of global crude supply comes under massive pressure. Therefore, oil prices will shoot up. So if it's a full blown out war, you remember in the last day or two, you had Donald Trump tweeting about total surrender, and we know where Ayatollah Khomeini is, and we can do it, but we're not going to. So the risk, there's probably two or three scenarios. The one scenario which we don't want is that the America goes in full head-on with Israel into this war, like what happened with Iraq. If that happens, it's going to be bloody for the whole region, but also financial markets will come under massive pressure. Oil will shoot through $100 a barrel. Guaranteed it will go up that if that happens, where it's a full-on blower and there's a risk that. So there's a small probability of that happening. The second probability is where America continues to support Israel with arms and the like, but allows Israel to do the sort of the attacking,
dirty work,
and but they will continue to fund and give the armaments and that, which is a reasonable probability. And the third thing is that it's an amicable settlement between Iran and the US in terms of a nuclear. If Iran and US agree on a deal, then Israel will be kept in check. But that's the probability. There is a probability there, but at the moment, it seems to be an unlikely in the shorter term. Doesn't seem to be clear, but it is a probability.
What's the agenda from an economic perspective? Israel want to control the oil reserves in the Middle East.
I think they want regime change.
In Iran,
they want a regime
but
change
the
in Iran.
overlying or the overall agenda is they want to have control over the oil
Then you
fields.
will control. So remember, they did it. Iraq, it happened where Americans were in that, and they tried to control. But again, there was a whole sectarian shift that changed, and we saw what happened.
They want a regime change that's complicit with them.
That's complicit with them. There's talk about one of the Shah's sons and the like that's being groomed. Whether that's true, we don't know. But there is definitely an intention to.
They want a stooge to be on their side, like the rest of the Middle East. And the same in Gaza, where they want the other leaders to come in, and they want to control, so they take control of the energy reserves.
As my brother Imran here highlighted, is basically you've got a bully that's sitting in the middle
and wants to take control of the
and he wants
resource.
to take control of everything around him. That's what he wants to do. He's been allowed to do it completely for a number of years. Remember 1981, they went into Iraq and also bombed it. Iraq was also trying to set up. So they bombed it. They went into another sovereign country. No permit. They just went in and did as they pleased, with no repercussions after that. So they know that they can go in, do as they please, and nobody will do nothing to them. Just imagine if a country like South Africa had to go into Australia, bomb the hell out of Australia, and do what you have to recover. Would the world sit and say idly, no, it's fine, you could do this? But because Israel is doing it, nobody will say a word. And the fact that you've got the backing of the one of the big superpowers of the world, so-called superpowers, or one of the big, they're allowed to basically do as you please.
Now, obviously, we have to now understand that in Gaza, the interests are the oil reserves, the gas reserves. They want stooge governments in the Middle East, and they're looking at ensuring that every government in that area are complicit with them, like Egypt is. And as we were speaking about that protest, they want the Gazans to move out to other countries so they take control of that particular area. But Imran, I want to bring you in because we're concluding now. We over our time. Israel by itself, or the Zionists that the world calls them, are basically illegal occupants in land that belongs to the Palestinians. So basically, they came in there illegally and forcefully removing those that were part of the land, the indigenous to the land. Like in South Africa, it was abundantly clear that the activists made the struggle. Nelson Mandela spent time in prison to say, this is our land, and the Afrikaners came in and invaded. They must move out and allow democracy to prevail. So do we see any reaction? Because now there's a situation where the West is supporting Israel to continue with its illegal activities, because that seems to be the game plan.
I think we're moving from the frying pan to the pot, Yunus. I'm not too sure. I haven't seen. I cannot confirm, but I've seen posts going around. Up to now, it's been the two-state solution. It's been the talk of the two-state solution, and South Africa's international policy is we support the establishment of the state of Palestine and state of Israel. But there is talk wherein the Americans are now talking of a single state of Israel and a separate state of Palestine in an Arab country. And I think Trump has gone on to saying that there's so much of land in the Arab world. One of them is allocate a space in that land and make that the state of Palestine.
For the 2 million Palestinians.
Yes. So it's going from the frying pan to the pot. What you started by saying that this is their land, they've been living here for thousands and thousands of years, that was taken away forcibly due to a deal cut between the British at that point in time. And now what was hopeful, and then unfortunately what it's playing out, the playbook, it's down to real estate. I've also seen posts, again, you know, of land being sold, I'm telling off plan, in Gaza. And Trump has openly spoken about this Riviera, this Riviera on the Gaza. So no, it's. I mean, the point is, this is not a laughing matter. This is someone's life. This is their history. This is their heritage. I mean, Yunus, we in KwaZulu-Natal in 2021, was it in July, we experienced the insurrection. Huh? I mean, it was for 5 days, I think. But how unstable were we? How much fear? How much of anxiety? I mean, there was a possibility of someone dying, of one being attacked. And it was just a possibility. The action may have been, we live in Overport, there may have been action far away, but we could feel it, our emotions. Now, just for one moment, you know, if the listeners can just join us in understanding the fear, the anxiety, the fear of displacement. I mean, this is the fear. This is people have been displaced. I mean, where is humanity gone? And this is where we, as sitting in this radio station, and this is why it hurts me and it pains me when I see people going on with their lives normal. I think there was, I'm not too sure, I don't want to quote, I'm not a theologian, but there was a great, I'm not too sure if it was one of the Khulafa or Rashidin, I'm not quite sure, but he really smiled. You know, when one looks around at the difficulties the Ummah is going, and I'm not saying don't smile, but what I'm saying is when I reflect upon the lives of people have now in our own country, I mean, let's not talk about the Arabs. The Prophet ﷺ said that this Ummah is like one body, one part feels. So if we are a body that's feeling the pain of Gaza, then why is it that our life and the way we consume the products, we don't care about boycotting products, we just go on like it's normal? So maybe we need to look at ourselves and do some self-reflection, because the change starts with you. If each and every one of the 2 billion, ignore the leaders, they are probably a handful somewhere, but there's 2 billion other Muslims. If each one of us starts and say, you know what, I want to do the right thing, then I think we can bring about change. The change starts with us.
Shukran, Imran, some very pertinent comments, and we have to reflect ourselves. Ernest, your closing comments. We're 20 minutes over time, and people need to sleep and rest and what have you. We've said a lot. You got the oppression of fighting the tyrants in the municipality, and you have a situation where pre-apartheid, the activists were fighting the colonial whites. But now we're in a situation where we've given power to the majority, but some opportunists are running amok. And it is not our leaders that are, they basically being brought into this situation. So as a councillor now, how do you fight this scourge of wasteful expenditure, irregular expenditure, maladministration, and make your voice known? Because what Imran is saying is that you need to, the least you can do is talk about it, raise it, and make sure that, you know, by chatting something gets done. Your concluding comments, Ernest?
I could be here for an hour on this topic.
But you got 2 minutes. Just give us a summary.
Give me 2 minutes. Okay.
Yes.
I think it's important to start at the beginning. If you want change in your basic community, get involved. It's simple. Don't sit and just make it and think it's somebody else's problem. At the end of the day, rates and taxes are expected by us to be paid. Well, I also have a right to know where my money is being used, and I want it to be used appropriately. Not some person who there is sitting behind a counter who's doesn't know left from right. The other point is, if we want change in the municipality, the reality is that we have to get out and vote. It's simple. It's point. We've got just over a year to go before the next election. And the reality is that that change can only be accomplished at the ballot box. It's not something that I can force or you can force or anybody in this room can force. But the reality is, if we want the change in the municipality, we need to take the power away from the people who are actually creating the problem, all right, and actually give it to the people who are wanting to. Right now, we have a collective bunch of parties who want to make it work. But at the end of the day, we can only work if we're given the power to do so. And that, unfortunately, is in the hands of the listeners and everybody who is out there who says, oh, no, bugger that, I don't want to vote. Well, guess what? Municipalities have been won on less than double-digit votes. So that's the reality of it. If you want effective governance, then vote for effectively. Simple.
Exactly. Well said, Ernest. And, on a note on Ernest, whenever we request him to come to the studio, he's here. And whenever our communities phone Ernest, he's there to contact the different departments in the municipality. So if all the councillors can do this, understand their role in their wards and the fact that they're working for the communities in that ward and assist in whichever way they can because of the involvement in the municipal departments. And if people raise queries, to give them support, assist, and give them feedback whether you got the job done or not. And then, as Ernest says, between now and 2026 elections, ratepayer associations, civic activists have to mobilize, as was done in the past, and they brought about change in leadership in those wards. So we should continue to do so. And even the president of South Africa mentioned that if you believe that your councillor is not doing the job, bring about change and be active in your community. So it's not a question of going on a party base. If those parties haven't delivered, like what happened in the last elections, MK made a whole lot of promises, but they're falling down as well. So somewhere along the line, I firmly believe that those that are keen in improving service delivery in a particular ward, those leaders must be identified and stand for elections, notwithstanding which party they stand for, as long as they got the will for the people. That should take place. On that note, we 25 minutes out of time, but we made up for lost time. And as usual, News in Focus always provides up-to-date news. We covered a whole lot of issues. Only one area we'll bring back Ernest maybe next week or the following week to give us an update on the debt relief. But people do contact your councillors if you have areas in your account so that they can assist you to have a 50% write-off and the balance payable over a period of time. And that is applicable till 30th June. So catch a wake-up call in whichever ward, identify your councillors, and ask them to assist you to meet with municipal officials to get that relief. Otherwise, after 30th June, I hope Ernest and them ask for an extension, but if that is not forthcoming, you're going to lose off. But yes, I think they're fighting for it. But I thank our guests for joining us. We had quite a fruitful program. We covered a whole lot of subjects. Professor HUSSAIN VAWDA, who was very ailing in the last 10 months, joined us, and he gave some pertinent information. Councillor Ernest Smith from Ward 27, as usual, always very, very helpful. Sister SUMAYA Khan, chairperson of United for Palestine Women's League, education activist, unionist, and educator. She presents the education program on Tuesdays. Honorary IMRAN SUBRATHIE MP and General Secretary for United for Palestine. HASSAN MOLTALA, as usual, our economist. He said it as it should be said. He's tipped us off what could happen if things go bad to us. Maulana Abdul Khalik Ali, we had him for a short while, he cut, but I believe he's coming into Durban in the weekend, so we'll have him live in one of our programs. We thank the listeners for listening to us. I know there's a lot of comments that's come through from various listeners that we couldn't read. Frank, hey, we haven't forgotten about you, from PM Berg and other listeners. Please keep in touch with us. We'll link you up with the councillors if there are any urgent issues. But my closing comments is we have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the controller of the universe. He wants us to obey the commandments and follow Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, perform our 5 times salah, keep up with our good amals, have this humanitarian touch with us, help our fellow colleagues, continue with the work that Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam performed and Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam. And if we upright, we keep away from guna, then inshallah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help will most certainly come, and oppression will be dealt with, and those that are just will be victorious. On that note, until next Wednesday, same time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Before I close off, I'd like to thank our able technician, Brother Asif Pili, who done a fantastic job this evening in difficult circumstances, trying to get hold of people. He performed admirably well. I thank you, Asif, for performing so admirable. for this program this evening. And on that note, until next week, Wednesday, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Ya Rasool Allah, Ya Habib Allah, Aka, 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 پھر کے گلی گلی تباہ ہو کر صبر کی کھائے کیوں دل کو جو عقل دے خدا تیری گلی سے جائے کیوں رخصت قافلہ کشان غش سے ہمیں اٹھائے کیوں رخصت قافلہ کشان غش سے ہمیں اٹھائے کیوں سوتے ہیں ان کے سائے میں سوتے ہیں ان کے سائے میں کوئی ہمیں جگائے کیوں پھر کے دل کو جو عقل دے خدا تیری گلی سے جائے کیوں یاد حضور کی قسم غفلت عیش ہے ستم یاد حضور کی قسم غفلت عیش ہے ستم خوب ہے قید غم میں ہم خوب ہے قید غم میں ہم کوئی ہمیں چھڑائے کیوں یا رسول اللہ یا رسول اللہ یا
Radio Al-Ansar, keeping you in the loop.
Almost 1 in 5 South African children attend school each day without having eaten breakfast. This seriously affects their ability to concentrate